Well, good afternoon, and as we continue on here with these great conversations on the air, I've got two great guests to talk about another book. We've had one of the authors on already for a previous book that she's written. It's Jolene Sludakova and Beau W. Daniels talking about Secrets of Coyote Canyon. You can see it here. How you doing?
Good.
Good.
Nice to be here.
I'll tell you, I read the book yesterday in a day, about 300 pages, and it's a fast, fun read that ties in parts of the Northwest and then heads down into the Southwest. Jolene, we've talked before about a previous book that you had written about your adventures down in the Southwest. Now, is this just a continuation along a theme of stories, or how did you come up with the Secrets of Coyote Canyon?
It's a continuation of writing, but there are two new characters. The other, Janet Behringer stories are based on Beau and I.
Yeah.
And they will continue. This one uses, I don't even know how I came up with the characters, but I think living in the desert for growing up most of my life and living around Apache and Navajo, and I just always have been into their culture, that I chose Native Americans as the main characters.
And I know that you have been up here, and then you were down there, and then back up here, but it was fast.
And she has such a magical way of wording things that just yesterday, we've already had pre-orders and some of our orders. One is a guy that I work with, and he loves it. He said, man, he said, I'm in chapter 1, and I love the way you guys are describing things already.
Yeah, it's a very casual storytelling. It's very easy to read. I mean, it moves through fast, and you get through the stories, and you really become kind of excited to find out, what happened at the lab today, or how is the work happening at the doctor's office. So the town is like, and you say it in the book, it's like a Stepford Wives town. And I think people drive through towns every so often and they go, boy, this is perfect. I wonder what it's like. Have you driven through places that were like this? I mean, that's kind of the inspiration here.
Actually, several of our moves were to areas. One is where Jolene's mom still lives, Smallburg, north of Phoenix. And we used to drive through, stop in at the restaurant, and we'd always look in the canyons there, that particular place. And one day we bought a house with her mom there, and we lived there for a while. We got to know the people in the community. And these things are inspiring in a lot of ways. You meet interesting people wherever you go, and you always can collect stories. So why not write them down?
And there's always, there's always behind stories. There's always backstories about why that person runs this or why that person runs that. And so it's fun in the book as the characters kind of start peeling that onion and finding the different layers there. Who was your favorite characters in the book? Besides the mains, who was, when it comes to the secondary characters that help propel the storyline?
I don't know.
George to me always seemed like he knew a little bit more about what was going on and helped push the Blue Wolves on their journey a little bit more.
George is, for me, I think one of my favorites, and based on a gentleman that I knew, and then portrayed as an ERP, which is, as you do your character sheets, as you develop a character, you have to write a character sheet, where he came from, his family line. And so George actually is a descendant of the real ERPs in the Southwest. And so it was fun to use that as a private investigator. But just one of those, based on somebody I knew that was just a good old boy, you could just sit and have conversation with, have coffee, and find out things.
And when the families go out and explore in the cave systems and the mountains out there, are those based on any real life adventure? Did you go out into the caves? Did you find an old knife somewhere? Or where do those kind of come from?
We've done a lot of exploring, a lot of rock hounding. I've been a rock hound since this big, and mostly in Arizona, so that fed a lot into that. As far as the cave and the knife, that was
I think
his idea.
That just fits so well in the storyline. again, having friends that are Native Americans, I worked with some Navajo men that I really admired, loved their culture, just good people. And so it was fun to use just the southwestern area, like the Chiricahuas. I backpacked in them. They are amazing. And to think that Geronimo hid out so long, and you backpack and you see that there's caves, there's rocks, there's trees and things, and you think, no wonder he hid out for 13 years.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating area too.
Where can people find the book? Where do they go?
Our website. Currently our website,
Yeah.
which is, I don't know if you have it up there.
I don't have it up here,
there
but I
yet.
can put
Okay.
it in the show notes. Is it JoleneSladekova.com?
JoleneSladekova.com.
We'll put that in there for sure. And the other book is still available there
Yeah,
as well.
actually, Beau
Did he put it on
brought
there?
one there.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was a fun.
So
that
they-
was a fun read as
Either
well.
one could be ordered there.
Okay, very cool. And then what's the next story to come out?
Well, there's another Jana Behringer one coming,
Mm-hmm.
and then the Blue Wolf story. This is the Coyote Canyon. This is the first of a trilogy.
Okay.
So books 2 and 3 are already being worked on.
Wow.
So.
Well, I look forward to reading and talking with you about those as well.
The funny thing is now that he's writing, he wants to quit construction
Uh-oh.
and just stay at home and write.
And just stay home
I
and
said,
write.
well, once we start making money, that'd be okay.
Yeah, let's wait for some of the
For now.
residuals here first.
You know, it's funny because 40 years in construction, and I've always been around guys that we enjoyed our job, and we would spend a lot of time goofing around, just to be honest, while we're working. And it's lent itself to, wow, I've got a lot of stories in my back pocket. I've got some characters too. I worked with a gentleman, they used to call him Chainsaw Jack, just a maniac on the construction site, and he drove his men hard, and I thought I could write a whole book on that. So it is inspiring. It's kind of neat. 40 years, my body's worn out. It's like,
Yeah.
maybe it's time to use a pen.
Let's do something different. Well, let's hear couple of passages on the book, some of your favorite passages to kind of set the scene or give the listeners a sense of what they're going to get into.
Okay. I figure the first chapter is good to start because it gives, it lets you know how they meet, who these main characters are. They're just teenagers right here. It's back in the 1970s. And this is it, Sissika and Peo Peo. Sissika stood at the edge of the Okanagan River, the blazing sun shining in all its glory in a cloudless sky, causing temperatures to soar over 100 degrees. Hundreds of people were fanning themselves while others splashed water onto their overheated bodies. Some were standing chest high in the river, but not Sissika. She was from the Arizona desert and accustomed to days and nights much hotter than the heat of Washington's Okanagan Valley. Besides, she wasn't aware of the heat or anything else around her. At that moment, all her attention was focused on the other side of the river. She'd been going to powwows her entire life, but this was the first time to attend the Omak Stampede. Excitement and tension were building, not only in Sissika, but in everyone there, both human and animal. The tension in the air was palpable, the energy rising until it felt like it would explode. When the announcer's voice over the loudspeaker stopped, an eerie silence overtook the scene. Every person there held their breath in anticipation. Crack! A gunshot broke the silence. Even though she was expecting it, the blast and added energy of the gun was still startling, causing Sissika to jump and almost lose her footing and fall into the water. As her ears recovered from the explosive sound, Sissika began to hear yelping and hollering from beyond her sight up on the hill. She could only imagine the courage and skill needed by both man and beast for what she was about to witness. She stood motionless as a statue, staring at the hillside, waiting. All at once, 20 horses and their riders came flying over the top of the steep drop, shouting their war whoops and waving their beaded quirts as they plummeted over the crest, down the 225-foot embankment and into the river. It was amazing. Horse and rider had become one as ground turned to water beneath them. Only a couple of riders fell, but all the horses stayed upright. As they swam across the wide river, getting ever closer to their final goal in the rodeo arena, Sissika came alive. She realized her heart was beating faster and stronger than she knew it could. But this was a different kind of pounding than the excitement she'd felt while watching the thundering ride of the fearless and screaming riders charge down the suicide hill. No, her world was beginning to spin, time decelerating as the apparition drew closer and she recognized that it was real. Directly in front of her was the most beautiful Indian brave and horse she had ever seen. They were both like a fantasy captured on canvas. A young brave wearing 2 long braids sat astride a stunning black and white paint. The stallion appeared to be white on black, its long two-toned hair flowing in the wind. Its mane had a few feathers attached to braids, and on either side of it were painted a blue hand on white and a yellow lightning bolt on black. It was absolutely stunning. In Sissika's mind, the stallions, both animal and human, were breathtaking. And I have to say about that, the Suicide Hill, I mean, we've been to the Olmec Stampede before, but always from the bottom, which is a tremendous view. But in our research, we've interviewed people in person on the reservations, and we were just over in Olmec not too long ago, and we went to the top of the hill. I could only get probably 10 feet to the edge because I can't imagine anybody going over that.
And for those who aren't familiar, in the suicide races, they go and they just
They
go
just
down.
go 225 feet
Wow.
and then cross the river, yeah. And those horses are trained and worked with, and they have to be able to swim. Yeah.
And that skill of riding plays into the book later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's a chance, I can read
Yeah,
a portion.
what do you have for me?
So I want to move forward to chapter 22, where after they've fallen in love, raised a family, and moved to Coyote Canyon, they take a weekend reprieve from all the stresses going on, and they decide to go out and do some rock hounding and camping. And so in this section, we'll see their rodeo skills. It says, it wasn't long into their ride, maybe about 9 a.m., when they noticed a black motorcycle coming from the area of the canyon and heading south towards the Mexico border. As they got closer, they noticed the rider. He was clad in black pants, jacket, gloves, boots, helmet, and visor, and black saddlebags on the back. The blackness was so complete, it was hard to tell where the driver ended and the bike began. They both watched in silence as he rode past, leaving only a trail of dust mingled with their puzzled expressions. Okay, that was weird, Sissy stated matter-of-factly as she glanced over at PJ. Just as they remounted their horses, a gunshot rang out, breaking a peaceful silence. A second after they heard the shot, there was a ricochet of a bullet off a rock just to the right of PJ's head. They both looked off in the distance in the direction of Coyote Canyon and saw another dark mystery rider coming their way. With the riding experience and skills, they both bolted down the wash, hoping for either cover or a way out. PJ could hear the cycle was also in the wash now, headed toward them and getting closer. A couple of more shots whizzed past them. PJ gave Sissy the cue, and at the next chance, the blue wolf shot up over the sides of the wash into some flatter ground. Without any other way to fight back or protect themselves, their horses were about to prove their loyalty to their masters. The cycle was gaining closer, the distance between them in record time. Emotions of fear and anger were now raging through PJ. His life seemed to be rushing past, his thoughts hard to gather. But the one thing he knew for certain, he feared for Sissy's safety and even her life. He couldn't allow anything to happen to her. There were beginning to be more outcroppings of large boulders and mesquite trees to navigate around and dart in and out of. They had been riding parallel to a deep wash that was now turning into more of a ravine than a dry riverbed. This gave PJ an idea. He needed to do something, as they couldn't outrun the cycle and they weren't bulletproof. The horses were still running at a full gallop, nick to nick. PJ yelled over to Sissy, "Remember your barrel racing?"
What? She yelled back, unsure she heard him correctly.
"Can you still do it?" PJ yelled.
Of course. Why?
"See those boulders up ahead? They look like big barrels to me. You do what you do best. I'll lead the guy away."
No, don't leave me, Sissy cried.
"You can do it, sis. I'm going to head for the ravine. When I see the right spot, well, just remember Omak. I'll see you back at camp. Go, Sissy, now."
Sissy angled Feather away from the wash they'd been beside and headed toward the large outcropping of boulders. At the moment they reached the first large stone formation, Feather knew exactly what to do as Sissy pulled and leaned inward toward the rocks. Feather practically laid on the ground as she twisted around behind the granite barrel and then up again like a bolt of lightning. Then around another one and another one. The cycle slowed as she ducked behind the last one and largest boulder. The rider in black took a shot at Sissy before turning to follow PJ. He had taken the bait. With the bike and rider no longer a threat to her, Sissy rode hard and made it back to their camp. There sat their loyal companion, Patches. She was sitting at attention in front of the vehicles, waiting in expectation for her master's arrival. Sissy hugged Feather and Patches and cried out in horror as she heard a shot resonate in the distance, echoing across the desert. That was all she heard, then nothing but silence. Now, to know what happened,
You got to get the book.
you got to get the book.
And the book again, Secrets of Coyote Canyon. You can get it at jolenesludakova.com. We'll put the links in the show notes here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having
you.
us. Again.
Yeah.